Nityananda Shri Advaita Vibhu Ishvara Puri Ke Dhanya Gauri Shri Chaitanya Jagat Guru Gora Mahaprabhu Mahaprabhu Shri Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahe Anya Rupanuga Janara Jivana Vishvambara Priyankara Shri Swarupa Damodara Shri Goswami Rupa Sanatana Rupa Priya Mahajana Jiva Raghunatha Hana Tara Priya Kavi Krishna Dasa Krishna Dasa Priya Para Narottama Seva Para Garapada Vishwanatha Asha Vishwanatha Bhakta Sata Baladeva Jagannatha Tara Priya Shri Bhakti Vinoda Mahabhagavata Bhara Shri Gora Kishora Bhara Hari Bhajanete Charamoda Ihara Paramahamsa Gorangera Nija Bhangsha Tadera Charane Mamagati Ami Seva Udasina Namete Chidandedina Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Shri Vaishnavana Vibhara Sada Sevya Seva Para Tahara Dahita Dasanama Tara Pradhan Pracharako Shri Bhakti Vedanta Namo Patita Janete Toya Dama Hare Krishna. This is a song written by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, except for that last verse. Seems that someone has added that one. Somehow the last one is glorifying our Srila Prabhupada. So this is a verse by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada, all about our Guru Parampara, in which he says, in the beginning of creation, the science of devotional service was received by the four-headed Brahma from the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. Devarshi Narada's understanding of this divine science was obtained from Brahma. The great sage Krishna Dvaipana Vyasa, who was empowered to compile the Vedic literatures, became a disciple of Devarshi Narada. Sripad Madhvacharya, the founder of the Shuddhadvaita school of Vedanta philosophy, who visited Vyasadeva at Badarikashram in the 13th century to learn from him Vedanta philosophy, calls himself a servant of Krishna Dvaipana Vyasa. Purna Pragyatirtha, Madhva, is the guru and sole refuge of Padmanabha Tirtha. The two other principal disciples of Madhva are Nrihari Tirtha and Madhava Tirtha. Madhava Tirtha accepted the great Paramahamsa Akshobhya Tirtha as a disciple. The principal disciple of Akshobhya Tirtha was known as Jayatirtha. Jayatirtha's service was for his disciple Gyanasindhu. Dayanidhi received the science of devotional service from Gyanasindhu, and the servant of Dayanidhi was Vidyanidhi, Vidyadhiraja Tirtha. Rajendra Tirtha became a disciple of Vidyadhiraja Tirtha. Rajendra Tirtha's servant was known as Jayadharma or Vijayadhvaj Tirtha. In this way, you should properly understand this disciplic succession. The great sannyasi Sri Purushottam Tirtha received his knowledge in the service of his guru Vijayadhvaj Tirtha, Jayadharma. The principal disciple of Purushottam Tirtha was Subramanya Tirtha. I woke up my mother-in-law. His servant was the great Vyasa Tirtha, Vyasaraya. Vyasa Tirtha's servant was Lakshmipati Tirtha, whose disciple was Madhavendra Puri Goswami. The chief disciple of Madhavendra Puri was Ishvara Puri, and two of his other disciples were the renowned incarnations of Godhead, Sri Nityananda and Advaita Acharya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the spiritual preceptor of all the worlds, made Ishvari Puri greatly fortunate by accepting him as his spiritual master. Mahaprabhu Sri Chaitanya is none different from Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, and is the very life of those Vaishnavas who follow Sri Rupa Goswami. Prabhupada would often quote this line, Mahaprabhu Sri Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Nahi Anya. There's no difference between Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Radha Krishna. Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami, Rupa Goswami, and Sanatana Goswami were the givers of great happiness to Vishnu Bharata, Sri Chaitanya. The great souls Jiva Goswami and Raghunath Das Goswami became very dear to Rupa Goswami. Jiva Goswami was a disciple of Rupa Goswami, and Raghunath Das Goswami, a disciple of Vaitacharya's disciple Yadunandana Acharya, was accepted by Rupa and Sanatana as their third brother. Raghunath Das Goswami's beloved student was Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami. Krishna Das Kaviraj was an intimate friend of Lokanath Goswami. They lived together in Vrindavan and always discussed the topics of Krishna with one another. Lokanath Goswami, a disciple of Gadadhar Pandit, had only one disciple, whose name was Narottam Das. Narottam Das was always engaged in the service of his guru, and he also engaged himself in the service of his guru's intimate friend. Thus, he became very dear to Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami. To serve the feet of Narottam Das Thakur was the only desire of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who was the fourth acharya in disciplic succession from Narottam Das. Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur was the Shiksha Guru, instructing spiritual master of Baladeva Vidyabhushana, to whom he taught the precepts of Srimad Bhagavatam. Jagannath Das Babaji was a very prominent acharya after Srila Baladeva Vidyabhushana and was the beloved Shiksha Guru of Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's intimate friend and associate was the eminent Mahabhagavata Sri Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, whose sole joy was found in Hari Bhajan. These great saintly Vaishnavas are all Paramahamsas, or devotees of the highest order, and they are all part of Lord Gauranga's own spiritual family. Their holy feet are my refuge. I have no real interest in devotional services, and I am a poor and lowly Tridandi sannyasi named Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. Hare Krishna, that was a song written by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. There is like an extra verse that's been added. I'm not sure who's composed it, but we did sing it. And it says, the renowned Sri Varshabhana Vidayita Dasa, that's the initiated name of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, is always engaged in the service of his spiritual master, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. His foremost disciple preacher is Sri A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who has spread the message of Lord Chaitanya throughout the world and is thus a reservoir of mercy and compassion for all fallen souls. Hare Krishna. So nice to remember Guru Parampara. Remember their names. We are all so indebted. Now, Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th Canto, Chapter 17, text number 3, which says, Tata saptarishayas tat prabhava bhikya yamnanu tapasa atyantiki siddhir etavati bhagavati sarvatmani vasudeva nuparata bhakti yoga labinaivo pekshitaya tatma gatayo muktim iva gatam mumukshava iva sabahumanam adyak jata jutar udvahanti. Word for word translation says, Tataha, thereafter, Saptarishaya, the 7 great sages, beginning with Marichi. Tat Prabhava Abhigya, who knew very well the influence of the Ganges River. Yam, this Ganges water. Nanu, indeed, tapasaha, of our austerities. Atyantiki, the ultimate. Siddhi, perfection. Etavati, this much. Bhagavati, the supreme personality of Godhead. Sarva Atmani, Haribo, Sarva Atma Prabhu. In the all-pervading. Vasudeva, Krishna. So Sarvatma means Krishna. Anuparata, continuous. Bhakti Yoga, of the mystic process of devotional service. Labhena, simply by achieving this platform. Eva, certainly. Upekshita, neglected. Anya, other. Artha Atmagataya, all other means of perfection, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Muktim, liberation from material bondage. Eva, like. Agatam, obtained. Mumukshavaha, persons desiring liberation. Eva, like, sa bahumanam, with great honor, adya api, even now, jata jutai, with matted locks of hair, udvahanti, they carry. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Prabhupada ki jai. The seven great sages, Marichi, Vashishta, Atri, and so on, reside on planets beneath Dhruvaloka. Well aware of the influence of the water of the Ganges, to this day they keep Ganges water on the tufts of hair on their heads. They have concluded that this is the ultimate wealth, the perfection of all austerities, and the best means of prosecuting transcendental. Having obtained uninterrupted devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they neglect all other beneficial processes like religion, economic development, sense gratification, and even merging into the Supreme. Just as Gyanis think that merging into the existence of the Lord is the highest truth, these seven exalted personalities accept devotional service as the perfection of life. Purport. Transcendentalists are divided into two primary groups. The Nirvisheshavadis, or impersonalists, and the Bhaktas, or devotees. The impersonalists do not accept spiritual varieties of life. They want to merge into the existence of the Supreme Lord in his Brahman feature, the Brahma Jyoti. The devotees, however, desire to take part in the transcendental activities of the Supreme Lord. In the upper planetary system, the topmost planet is Dhruvaloka, and beneath Dhruvaloka are the seven planets occupied by the great sages, beginning with Marichi, Vashishta, and Atri. All these sages regard devotional service as the highest perfection of life. Therefore, they all carry the holy water of the Ganges on their heads. This verse proves that for one who has achieved the platform of pure devotional service, nothing else is important, even so-called liberation, kaivalya. Srila Sridhar Swami states that only by achieving pure devotional service of the Lord can one give up all other engagements as insignificant. Prabodhananda Saraswati confirms his statement as follows. Kaivalyam narakayate tridasha purakasha pushpayate durdantriya kala sarpa patali protkatha vishvam purna sukayate vidi mahindradishcha kitayate yat karunya kataksha vaibhavavatam tam gauram evastama. That's from his Chaitanya Chandramrita, number 5. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has perfectly enunciated and broadcast the process of Bhakti Yoga. Consequently, for one who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the highest perfection of the Mayavadis, Kaivalya, or becoming one with the Supreme, is considered hellish, to say nothing of the Karmi's aspiration to be promoted to the heavenly planets. Devotees consider such goals to be worthless phantasmagoria. There are also yogis who try to control their senses, but they can never succeed without coming to the stage of devotional service. The senses are compared to poisonous snakes, but the senses of a bhakta engaged in the service of the Lord are like snakes with their poisonous fangs removed. The yogi tries to suppress his senses, but even great mystics like Vishvamitra fail in the attempt. Vishvamitra was conquered by his senses when he was captivated by Menaka during his meditation. She later gave birth to Shakuntala. The wisest persons in the world, therefore, are the bhakti yogis. As Lord Krishna confirms in Bhagavad Gita, Yoginam api sarvesham madgatenantaratmana shadavan bhajate yomam sameyukta tamo mata. Of all yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Tadati Swapanantikam Vandeham Shiguru Shiyuta Parakamalam Shigurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Gunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Kopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Anamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we're hearing some more glories of the river Ganges and how the seven great sages are aware of the influence of the water of this Ganges, and they keep that water on the tufts of hair on their heads. Oh my gosh. I just realized that I didn't have the audio settings such so that you could hear the song. Probably didn't hear any of the bhajan. Oh well, maybe for the best. I hope everyone can hear me now. The seven great sages, they know the influence of the river Ganges, knowing that it originates from the lotus feet of the Lord Vishnu. And so they always keep that water on their heads. And they've concluded that this is the ultimate wealth, the perfection of all austerities, and the best means of prosecuting transcendental life. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada's comparing the impersonalists, the Nirvisheshavadis, and the Bhaktas. And here we see the difference. For the impersonalists, there's no fun. The devotees, like these seven great sages, they get to enjoy with spiritual senses the transcendental water of the Ganges by meditating on its origin on the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. For the impersonalists, there's no such relishing of devotional service, and therefore their process is very difficult. Krishna himself says this in chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita. Making advancement is very difficult. Making advancement in impersonalist modalities is very difficult for anyone who has a body, which is most of us, because the senses are strong like serpents, and to simply suppress them is problematic. I know from personal experience, and there's no shortage of examples throughout history, even in modern history, of religionists who suppress their senses and then therefore, they blow up in all sorts of weird ways and cause a lot more harm than good. Not all the time, but enough so that we should see it as very problematic to try to simply suppress the senses. The process of devotional service is to engage the senses in the service of the master of the senses. And in this way, we rise above or transcend bodily concepts of life. Sarvapadi vinir muktam tat parat vena nirmalam. Hrishikena hrishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchate. This is what bhakti means. To use the senses in the service of the master of the senses. And then all of the upadis, all of the different identifications we have, they're easily discarded when one gets the higher taste of engaging the senses in the service of the master of the senses. Nowadays, everyone is very concerned with upadis, identity politics. You just come on down here to Penn State and you can hear about it every day. You got to get so into your upadis, your ethnicity, your gender, your sexual orientation, your historical traumas. Everything has to be, convalescent, no, what's that? Coagulate into a big mess of bodily identification. And then you have to kind of thrust that upadi onto others and make sure that everyone dances around your particular bodily concept of life in the hopes that it becomes some sort of synchronized, inauspicious rasa lila of everyone's bodily identifications somehow working with each other. But of course, the more one identifies with a limited body, the more there is cause for frustration and conflict. And that's basically the modern American university. It's wild. So hardly any consider that the solution really is sarva upadi vinir muktam, to simply give all that up. Not falsely, not by just imagining oneself to be nothing, but to realize oneself to be a servant of the Supreme Lord, Shrishikesha, to engage the senses in the service of the master of the senses, such that the body and the pleasures that it awards are insignificant. That's the solution. That's the real final solution. Unfortunately, Mr. Adolf did not read far enough into Bhagavad Gita to see the real final solution, to not get into more bodily concept of life, but to actually transcend it entirely. It's the only platform for real peace. So the devotees have access to this. The impersonalists, they can't accomplish such things. Krishna says, as long as you're embodied, it's just so hard to deny the senses, to imagine oneself to be free from a body while entangled, and to imagine oneself to be somehow equal to Kaivalya, to be equal to the Supreme Lord, is very problematic. Most of the time, it's just hypocritical. Anyone who's done a little bit of book distribution on the streets knows that every once in a while, you meet some person who talks like this. We're all one. My identity, your identity, there is no difference. We're all just it. And it's always a lot of fun because then you just say to them, great, you just give me your wallet. It's actually my wallet. There was one guy in New Zealand who was so proud of himself. He was talking, I was there with a friend of mine from Australia. We were doing books together, kind of side by side. And this guy was all like going off about how we're all one. There's no difference between you and me. And I've realized that I'm God and all this sort of stuff. But he was serious. He was a New Zealander guy and he was dead serious. And so my friend, he just said, great, just give me your wallet. It's my wallet. It's not yours. You're imagining distinctions of yours and mine. So just place it into our hands right now. And this guy, he didn't want to back down from all of the nonsense that he had been going off on. So he gave this guy gave his wallet and then he walked off. And we're like, God, what do we do? Are we going to get in trouble for this later? And we continued distributing books. And the guy came back sometime later, 30, 40 minutes. And he said, I just need the driver's license. It's actually kind of important. He said, I just need the driver's license. He at least had the integrity to give us all of his money that was in his wallet. And it was a significant stash. And then we said, please just take the whole thing back. But it was so funny. He came back saying, well, I just need the driver's license. So obviously this idea of Kaivalya kind of falls apart so long as one is embodied. And even if one is embodied, our Shastra says that those persons who attain a sort of oneness, a sort of merging with the Supreme, even they become attracted by the material energy again, and they fall down again. There's a verse in Bhagavatam which says that. I can't remember the verse. If anyone is listening and who knows it, you can feel free to remember and shout it out. So Consider ourselves so fortunate. Following in the footsteps of the seven great sages, we get the wonderful joy of performing devotional service, bathing in the Ganges, in the Jamuna, and seeing everything in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Is so much better than trying to imagine oneself to be nothing, to try to avoid the landmine philosophy of like, well, I don't exist, and yet I am pursuing some sort of liberation, and yet there is no me that really pursues the liberation, and yet my bondage is only illusion. All of this is so problematic. And the philosophy to substantiate it is tricky, to say the least. Meanwhile, the devotees are simply enjoying. They don't have to suppress the senses. Although today we'll be fasting in honor of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but then we break the fast by enjoying prasadam that's been offered to the Lord, remembering Krishna, how he might enjoy tasting that prasadam. So for the impersonalist, the Kaivalya is narakayate, it's hellish. But for the devotees, Kevala Anandakanda is the same root word, Kaivalya and Kevala, which means like uh, uh, like an exclusive focus. The impersonalists see it as Kaivalya, oneness, merging with the Supreme. But for the devotees, Kevala Anandakanda. We have a one-pointed exclusive focus on Ananda, the bliss of devotional service. So let's consider ourselves very fortunate. We are indebted to all the great devotees, all the great sages. As we just heard in the Guru Parampara song, we're indebted to all of them for giving us the path which is simply joyful at every step. Kevala Ananda Kanda. And let's relish that joy. Oh, I took note of the Saptarishi, the seven great sages, because they're not all listed in this verse, which is very interesting. But here it said, Tata Saptarishayas, the seven great sages, beginning with Marichi. The others, as described in the Jaiminya Brahmana, Agastya, Atri, Bharadvaja, Gautama, Jamadagni, Vashishta, and Vishwamitra, whom we heard about. At the end of this purport, even Vishwamitra, the great sage, was waylaid, conquered by his senses, Srila Prabhupada says, captivated by Menaka during his meditation. And he gave birth to Shakuntala. If I recall correctly, simply by hearing the jingle jangle of Menaka's ankle bells. She had some jewelry upon her feet, upon her ankles, and Vishwamitra, upon hearing that, is that right? Vishwamitra was distracted in this way. He while meditating, he heard the ringing of the ankle bells and became distracted. So demonstrating to us that the senses, they are difficult to control, even if you're a great sage, even for one who's very intelligent. Krishna says they can bewilder the mind of one, even of determined intelligence, who's endeavoring to control them. So let us not be naive. Let us instead be appreciative of the great process of devotional service given to us by the Acharyas, by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where we enjoy, by contact of the senses, with the ultimate sense object, Rishikesha, Krishna. Enjoy prasadam, enjoy singing and dancing, enjoy embracing the bodies of the devotees, enjoy smelling the flowers that are offered to the lotus feet of the Lord. We enjoy all of these things, engaging in service to Krishna, bowing down, placing our head upon the ground at the lotus feet of the Lord. All of this is so pleasurable, so much fun. For the other yogis who try to control their service, that try to control their senses, it is dry, to say the least. All right. So that's all I have to say about that purport. I did want to read something from His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, because today is his disappearance day. We all know so much about his life, his activities, but I thought today, because it's relevant to this purport about impersonalism and personalism, if it's all right with all you devotees, I would read from the foreword to Brahma Samhita, the commentary which was written by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And his foreword to the text, it's not very long, but really quite amazing. Wait, was that what I was going to read? The foreword? Yeah, okay, we'll read the foreword. Or we could read the purport to the verse about Radha and Krishna and the gopis. Maybe that one will be too long. It's quite a long purport, but really the most amazing purport that he writes on the verse from the 5th chapter about how the gopis are expansions of Srimati Radharani, Ananda Chinmayasa Pratibhavitabhis. Anyway, we probably don't have time for that one, but it's just such an amazing purport. I highly recommend anyone who's looking for a way to honor Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur today could read that verse and purport. Really just is so nice to summarize Goloka Vrindavan. But for now, I'm just going to read the foreword from Brahma Samhita, written by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in which he also smashes the impersonalists. Srila Prabhupada inherited that mood from his spiritual master, as we'll hear here. So the Thakur says, the materialistic demeanor cannot possibly stretch to the transcendental autocrat who is ever inviting the fallen conditioned souls to associate with him through devotion or eternal serving mood. Who is that transcendental autocrat? Govinda. The phenomenal attractions, that's this material world, are often found to tempt sentient beings to enjoy the variegated position which is opposed to undifferenced monism. People are so much apt to indulge in transitory speculations, even when they are to educate themselves on a situation beyond their empiric area or experiencing jurisdiction. The esoteric aspect often knocks them to trace out immanence in their outward inspection of transitory and transformable things. This impulse moves them to fix the position of the immanent to an indeterminate, impersonal entity, no clue of which could be discerned by moving earth and heaven through their organic senses. Here the Thakur is making very clear, being frustrated with transitory sensory things, people therefore logically conclude some sort of spirituality which is the opposite of materialism. Therefore, this idea of impersonalism or voidism is popular. It's a reaction to the frustration with the variegated materialism. But the Thakur says that you can't understand the slightest of this impersonal entity, even if you can move heaven and earth with your organic senses. So there's no aspect of your senses which can understand impersonal Brahman. One tries to reason an impersonal absolute truth. One tries to reason it as a result of their sensory frustration with material existence. But your senses cannot understand this impersonal absolute. So there's quite a flaw in this logic. He continues saying, the lines of this booklet, that's the Brahma Samhita, will surely help such puzzled souls in their march toward the personality of the immanent, lying beyond their sensuous gaze of inspection. The very first stanza of this publication will revolutionize their reserved ideas when the nomenclature of the Absolute is put before them as Krishna. The speculative mind would show a tendency of offering some other attributive name to designate the unknown object. They will prefer to brand him by their experience as the, quote, creator of this universe, the entity beyond phenomena, Much like other religious traditions, when they use the names Yahweh, Allah, it means like this. It refers to an aspect of the Lord, the creator, the greatest, the supreme. But here Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is saying those who have a tendency towards personalism will be very glad to hear that the best nomenclature for the absolute truth, the best name is Krishna. So anyway, they prefer to brand him by their experience as the creator of this universe, the entity beyond phenomena, far off the reference of any object of nature and void of all transformation. So they will urge that the very fountainhead should have no conceivable designation except to show a direction of the invisible and inaudible, untouchable, non-fragrant, and unperceivable object. So many people, they want to claim that God cannot have sight, cannot have some physical form, visual form, cannot have a sound, cannot look like anything, smell like anything, taste like anything. They can't give any particular reason why not. But so many people, they want God to be invisible, inaudible, untouchable, non-fragrant, and imperceivable to justify their own frustration in trying to understand the object. The Thakur continues, but they will not desist from contemplating on the object with their poor fund of experience. That's the real human condition. You cannot stop from trying to understand what is the absolute truth. Even in the face of such limited senses and the frustration that they experience, still, we cannot desist from contemplating. What is that absolute truth? So the Thakur therefore says, the interested inquirer will be found to hanker after the records left by erudite savants, to incapable, he writes in such a way that's so unusual. Bear with me. The interested inquirer will be found to hanker after the records left by erudite savants, to incompatible, hallucinative views of savage demonstration. Meaning there's no shortage of speculations about what is the absolute truth. Some of them are erudite, written by savants, people who have some expertise, and some are just incompatible, hallucinative views that are savage. You just read any of the modern literature, especially the New Age stuff, and you can see a lot of hallucinative views about what the absolute truth must be. And some of it is really quite savage. It's actually more damaging than good, unfortunately. In comparing the different names offered by different thoughts of mankind, a particular judge would decide in favor of some nomenclature which will suit best his limited and specific whims. We want a definition of God that fits my expectation. This is a problem. I mean, it's good that what does he say? We cannot desist from contemplating the object. But one of the flaws is that we want God to meet my own expectation, my specific whims. The slave mentality of an individual will no doubt offer invective assertions to the rest who will be appealing to him for a revelation of his decision. So because we have to know everything, it's our human condition. We have to be confident in knowledge of everything and tell other people, it's like this, it's like that. So even with limited understanding of the absolute truth, still we'll try to offer our own speculations. He says it's a slave mentality of an individual, that we just have to offer some sort of assertion to anybody else who's asking, well, this is my revelation, that God is oneness. God is love. There might be some truth there, but we have to recognize it's a slave mentality. I got to say something, even though I don't know for sure. To remedy this evil, the hymns of the accepted progenitor of the phenomenon, it's Brahma, would do great help in taking up the question of nomenclature which is possessed of adequate power to dispel all imaginations drawn out of their experiencing the phenomenon by their tentative exploitations. In other words, Brahma has composed the Samhita to make very clear that the best definition of the absolute truth is one beyond your imagination, beyond whatever specific whim you have in mind. Krishna. The first hymn will establish the supremacy of the absolute truth. If his substratum is not shot by the bullets of limited time, ignorance, and uncomfortable feeling, as well as by recognizing the same as an effect instead of accepting him as the prime cause. So some people, they think God must be the effect, like, what was it? Nietzsche, I guess he was the one who said that man has created God for some particular need. Marx as well. They think God is the effect of something else. He said, we can understand the absolute truth just by reading the first verse of this Samhita. If we don't try to shoot him down by comparing him to our own limited experiences, by having some uncomfortable feeling, or by considering him the effect instead of the cause. He will be satisfied to mark that the object of their determination is the par excellence Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, who has eternally embodied himself in his ever-present, all-blissful, all-pervasive, perfective knowledge, as the very fountainhead of all prime causes of unending, non-beginning time, the supplying fosterer of all entities, mundane and transcendental. So it's referring to the verse first, right? Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karana. This is the Thakur's little introduction to that verse. The subsequent lines will go to determine the different aspects of the Absolute, who are but emanations of the supreme fountainhead Krishna, the attractive entity of all entities. Moreover, the derivative proclamation of the nomenclature will indicate the plane of uninterrupted, unending, transcendental felicity. And the nomenclature himself is the source of the two components which go by the names of efficient and material causes. In other words, he'll explain that Krishna is not just the cause of all causes and the source of everything, but also the origin of all bliss, uninterrupted, unending, transcendental felicity. The very transcendental name Krishna is known as the embodiment of all the transcendental eternal rasas, right? What is that verse? Akila Chaitanya Rasa. Krishna is the origin of all conscious experiences. Chaitanya Rasa, all the different moods and feelings that one can possibly experience. Krishna is the sum and substance of all of them. Wow. The very transcendental name Krishna is known as the embodiment of all the transcendental eternal rasas, as well as the origin of all eclipsed conceptions of uninterrupted rasas, found in the mentality of animated beings, which are successfully depicted by literateurs and rhetoricians for our mundane speculation. In other words, anything that you can imagine in terms of rasa or feelings or moods, Krishna is the origin. All of the transcendental original rasas, we have our 5 primary rasas, and then the secondary rasas described in Nectar Devotion. And the Thakur says here that even the eclipsed conceptions of rasas, the interrupted rasas, the materialistic ones that we read in all of the great literature of the world, all the great rhetoric, all the great writings of mundane speculation, all of those have their origin in Krishna as well. So if we're attracted to great stories, you have your Romeo and Juliet, you have your, I don't want to list some popular great stories. We have to recognize that whatever rasa is experienced there, whatever flavor, has its origin in Krishna. Akila Chaitanya Rasa. The verses of Brahma Samhita are a full elucidation of the origination of phenomenal and pneumonic conceptions. The hymns of the incarnated prime potency has dealt fully with the henotheistic speculations of different schools, which are busy to give an outer cover of an esoteric concoction without any reference to the true eternal aspect of transcendental, non-transformable, and imperishable manifestation of the immanent. That was one sentence, by the way. Hare Krishna. The hymns have also dealt with different partial aspects of the personality of the Absolute, who is quite isolated from the conception of the enjoyers of this phenomenon. In other words, Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, much better than all of our speculations. A very close attention and comparative study of all prevailing thoughts and conceptions will relieve and enlighten all. Be he a materialist, a downright atheist, an agnostic, a skeptic, a naturalist, a pantheist, or a panentheist, busy with their knowledge of three dimensions only by their speculative exertions. In other words, all sorts of people can appreciate how Brahma's Samhita, in his description of the absolute truth as Krishna, Govinda, is so comprehensive. It will give relief and enlighten all people. Even if you're a materialist, an atheist, an agnostic, a skeptic, a naturalist, a pantheist, or a panentheist. Pantheists are those who believe that sum total of all energy is God. And panentheists are those who believe that God is still something separate from the sum total of all energies. He continues saying, this booklet is only the 5th chapter of the hymns of Brahma, which were recorded in 100 chapters. The Supreme Lord Sri Chaitanya picked up this chapter from the temple of Adi Keshava in Tiruvattar, a village lying under the government of Travancore, for the assurance of all God-loving and especially Krishna-loving people in this conditioned jurisdiction. That's the material universe, is the conditioned jurisdiction. So Lord Chaitanya himself actually found this 5th chapter of Brahma Samhita in the temple in Tiruvattar, in the Adi Keshava temple. And he had the copies made so that now we have access to it. But we only have the 5th chapter. There were 100 chapters. All we have is this 5th chapter. This booklet can easily be compared with another book which passes by the name of Srimad Bhagavatam. Though it has got a reference in the pantheon of Puranas, the Bhagavatam corroborates the same idea of this Pancharatra. In other words, they both conclude Krishna is God. The devotee should consider that these two books tend to the identical Krishna, who is the fountainhead of all transcendental and mundane entities and has a manifestive exhibition of the plenary variegatedness. Then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he writes a sentence here, which I have no idea what it means. If anyone can translate this from English into simple English, please let me know. He says, aspersions of calumniation are restricted in the limited world, whereas transcendence cannot admit such angularities, being an angle of 180 degrees or void of any angular discrepancies. Hare Krishna. Continuing on, he concludes this forward by saying, the publisher is carried away to the realm of gratitude when his stores of publication are scrutinized. Thakur Bhaktivinoda has given an elucidatory purport of the conception of the most sublime fountainhead of all entities in Bengali, and one of his devout followers has rendered that into English for propagatory purpose. He's referring to himself. Even though he's his son, he considers himself the devout follower of his father, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. The purports and the translations are traced to the backgrounds of the writings of Srila Jiva Goswami, a contemporary follower of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya. The emotional aspirations will find fair play in perusing the text of this brochure by one and all who have any interest in pure theistic achievements. The materialistic inspection often goes on to say that the provincial conception of theism has made the depicting of transcendental unity into diverse face quite opposed to the ethical consideration of this limited region. So some people say we should not understand the absolute truth. It's opposed to the ethics of this limited material world. But the Thakur says, but we differ from such erroneous considerations when we get a prospective view of the manifested transcendentality, eliminating all historicities and allegorical enterprises. Meaning, if we have a definition of the absolute truth, which is so complete, so pleasing, then it reconciles all the problems that people consider about religious traditions. There's so many problems, unfortunately, when people have conflicts over their ideas of what God is, and when they have philosophically naive conceptions about like exclusive access to God, or, you know, God has entrusted us with this world so that we can exploit and kill all the animals, like some people believe. But the Thakur is saying that All of this can be resolved if we have a very clear definition of the absolute truth as it is described in Brahma Samhita. It eliminates all the historicities and allegorical enterprises of this mundane world. He says all our enjoying mood should have a different direction when we take into account the transcendental entity who has obsessed all frailties and limitations of nature. So we solicit the happier mood of the scrutinizers to pay special attention to the importance of manifestive transcendence in Krishna. It was found necessary to publish this small book for the use of English-knowing people who are interested in the acme of transcendental truths in their manifestive phases. The themes delineated in the text of this book is quite different from the ordinary heaps of poetical mundane literature, as they are confined to our limited aspiration of senses. The book was found in the South some 4 centuries ago, and it is again brought into light in the very same country after a long time, just like the worshipping of the goddess Ganges by the offering of her own water. So that was the foreword written by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the Sri Gaudiya Math in Calcutta on the 1st of August, 1932. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. There's so many amazing things written by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. There are lots of websites that have all of his different essays. He didn't write so many long books, but he wrote a lot of essays. There's a lot of very famous lectures that are transcribed. And but one that I will be relishing today is his commentary on Brahma Samhita. And even though the English he uses is a little challenging, so it's worth paying attention to. And you can see where Srila Prabhupada gets his attitude. As my spiritual master said, our parampara has a particular attitude. And so much of it comes from His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Our attitude of how should I say, putting the impersonalists in their place is very much inherited from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Our attitude of Sankirtan, preaching boldly with confidence, is very much inherited from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And our tradition of comprehensive, logical, philosophical understanding of our scripture is a particular attitude inherited from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So much of the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition is very emotional, spiritually emotional. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did not neglect to establish very clearly, very strongly, the philosophical foundation of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And he was very famous as Simha Guru, the lion guru, who was not afraid to converse with, to wax philosophical with, the caste brahmanas of the time, who demanded a sort of pedantic scriptural authority. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was able to converse with them and demonstrate how Gaudiya Vaishnavism and the ecstatic emotions of Krishna consciousness were actually the highest philosophical understanding of the absolute truth. So all of this tradition is inherited from His Divine Grace. And we are indebted to him for that. Wow, look at that. I've rambled on and on and on and on. A little too much. Thank you, dear devotees, for tuning in for Srimad Bhagavatam class and for hearing a little bit about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. There will be more to relish later in the day. Anyone have any comments or additions or subtractions or questions or challenges on anything that has been said anywhere? You can't really, because I was just reading. So you can't disagree with anything that I said. Because I was just reading from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Nope. All right then. Thanks for listening. Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nittai Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bo.